do need to color the hair. I've been thinking about it. Stories told of a little 5-year-old girl was having trouble all day long, just giving her mom fits, arguing back and forth. Finally, her mother, exasperated, said, "Jenny, I want you to sit in the corner right now, and don't you get up until I tell you." Little Jenny went over to the corner, sat down a few minutes. She thought about it. She yelled out to her mother. She said, "Mommy, I'm sitting down on the outside, but I'm standing up in the inside. Is that okay?" Too often that's me, and too often that's you. The story that we have been going through is about how to bring a holy God to an unholy people, or maybe an unholy people to a holy God. How can that be done? It's a love story. It's a love story. See a map here. It's going to come up and kind of briefly, and if you're following along in your maps, remember you can make your little drawings there. Of course, we've seen Noah and the ark, and we've seen, began in the garden with the fall, then the flood, and then we saw Abraham called from Ur of the Chaldees. He journeyed up to Haran and came down to the land, the promised land that God showed him. From there, several generations passed. We come to a prominent figure in the Bible called Joseph. That's the J there in the triangle. And of course, Joseph was sold by his brothers into slavery, traveled down into Egypt. And it was through God at work in this upper story, which we don't understand so many times, through various trials and difficulties, that he brings all of Joseph's family down into there, through whom that seed that we've been watching, been looking for, that seed is coming down into there, and there it's preserved, and there that promise that was given to Abraham so long ago of a great multitude, of a great nation, as the stars in heaven and as the sand on the sea, it all took place right down there in the land of Egypt. And then several years pass. These people become oppressed. And God chooses a man to go in. Not at the time he thought, but when God was ready, when things were right, he sent Moses into there to lead these people out of their bondage of Egypt over into the wilderness. There wasn't the original plan to just go into the wilderness for 40 years, but maybe it was God's plan. He knew it was going to happen, but the people had something else in mind. But, boy, that's another story altogether, and we'll get a little bit of that next week. If you would, open your Bibles to Exodus chapter 19. Exodus chapter 19. So, now the 10 plagues have happened. Pharaoh has finally gave the command to let the Israelites go. They marched out with a high hand, the Bible would say. That is, they despoiled the Egyptians. They took silver and gold and clothing. All the Egyptians were just giving them things, saying, "Get out of our land. Here, take this with you and go." And so, perhaps as many, there were 600,000 men that were fighting men among the Israelites. And so, if you start counting older people and then children, and you start counting the women, plus many Egyptians that also went with them, they had all these people. There were perhaps around 3 million people that set out from the land of Egypt and crossed the desert, came to the Red Sea, where God parted the waters, and the people walked across. And now they come to that Mount Horeb, or Mount Sinai, or the Bible will call it the mountain of God. And there they are at the foot of this great mountain where God had appeared to Moses in the burning bush. And here God is speaking to Moses and telling them about what he's going to do and what their responsibilities are. But I want you to note here in Exodus chapter 19, particularly in verse 5, he says, "Now therefore, if you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples, for all the earth is mine. Imagine God speaking to us and saying words like this. If you, number one, obey my voice, and you keep my covenant, you will be my treasured possession. At issue here is what? What's at issue? Obeying and keeping, right? Because God is faithful, and He's proven Himself faithful over and over again, and already in the Bible story. Abraham hears the promises. He finally goes out. He believes what God says, and God says, I will fulfill it. And Abraham has faith in Him, and then God goes about fulfilling that. Not in the time frame that we would expect, but over the years, God is working and fulfilling this. At issue is there is a holy God, but there is an unholy people. What is it that they need? Well, they need a way to be right with this holy God, so God can dwell among them. And so there's, in particular, three things here that we're going to see that God is at work in providing here. First of all, He provides a law. He provides rules. Our family, I don't know, where did the redneck, did you buy the redneck game for us? Where did that come from? I think you did. Has anyone else heard of the redneck game? You've had to hear of the redneck jokes. Okay. Well, I is one, you know. But anyway, these things are hilarious. And somebody bought us this game. I guess it was Jake. And several times we brought people over to the house, and it involves this, you know, a series of comical things kind of based on the comedy of Jeff Foxworthy. And I don't know when it happened, but a few years ago we lost the rules to it. And that's really convenient. You know, because when it's in your house where we always play the game, then it's my rules, right? You know, and so we will just go along, we'll just start playing the game, trying to remember what the rules are. And then every once in a while something will happen, and we'll think, oh, now what's the rule for that? And we'll just, oh, well, let's just do this, and we'll just make up the rules. Are you the one that makes up the rules throughout the game? You know those kind of people. If you're not the one, then you know those kinds of people. When you sit down there to play the game, whether it's dominoes or cards or any kind of board game, and you don't have the written rules, and there's somebody over there that's making up the rules as you go. I mean, how many really enjoy that? If you're the rule maker, you love it. If you're not, that really gets on your nerves. Yeah, these guys are understanding what I'm talking about. Just imagine a group of people with no rules. No written rules. Life would be chaos, wouldn't it? And so here is God calling this great people together, and He's going to give them rules. Exodus chapter 20, the very next chapter here. God Himself, as was mentioned by Brother Abraham, God Himself was up here on this. His presence was up on the mountain with Moses there, and God Himself speaks from the mountain. And all these people, these thousands upon thousands of people are at the foot of the mountain, and they hear the very voice of God. And it's like rumblings and thunders, and there's lightning, and there's smoke coming off of the mountain. And the whole mountain is trembling. You know, it's like earthquakes. And God is saying, you shall have no other gods before me. I don't know what the voice of God sounds like. It's probably about like that thing we heard before. But that was so terrifying that these people said, oh, please, don't let God speak to us anymore. Moses, you speak to us. Just let God speak to you and you speak to us. But God wanted it to sink down. They wanted them to hear it themselves and to have these laws and to be this great people. And so, you know, no other gods, no graven. The number 2, you shall not make a graven image. God's voice, thunder. Remember, you know, don't take the name of the Lord in vain. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Honor your father and mother. You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not covet. All these great commands that form the base of the law here. And matter of fact, the base of the laws of all society as we know it today come from this great law that was given by God. And then there were 600 more commandments that were added to the 10.